Hey, I hope everyone's doing all right. This is not going to be communication journal. I'm actually done with communication journals. As much as I did love them, they're actually pretty interesting. I like them. Give a little new perspective on viewing the world with advertising and how people communicate with that. But today I will be talking about the Chicago Humanities Festival. And the Chicago Humanities Festival is. Sorry if my face keeps changing. I'm trying to get to my notes. And sorry. The Chicago Humanities Festival is creates opportunities to have people learn more about the humanities and encourage them to study and enjoy the humanities at the same time. It's supposed to be for all age ranges and of all backgrounds. So it really gives Chicago really good access to more educational opportunities for everyone, which I really like. How this format's going to work is I'm first going to go through three different speeches, coming from three different people in three different areas, and quite different actually. And I'm going to first summarize them and analyze each of the speeches, and then at the end of it, when I'm wrapping up the journal, I will be explaining how all these humanities come together to form uh, our society today, and how each of these people and in their studies shape our society and how it's affecting our society, either be in the past, present, or our future. So the first person I'll be talking about is a woman by the name of S. Hollis Clayson. She is a PhD of 1984 at UCLA as a professor. She is a history of the modern art, which she specializes in the 19th century Europe. Um, she, of course, she has a slew of books that she's published and awards that she's won. She's a very accredited woman and a um, very affluent in her field, very influential in her field. And but at the time, which I'll get to later, but she's actually doing a current book right now called the City of Light in the era of Thomas Edison. We'll touch up base on that later about how that affects her speech. The benefactor for this um, event was Tackett Family Foundations, and doing some research, it was based in Glencoe, Illinois. Donated up to $30,000 to the Humanities Festival. Although there's other donations like the Jewish United Fund, Cachette Jewish Parents Organization, and the Jewish Community Centers Association. So we can see some kind of you can see the influence of the people who are part of this foundation and where else they go to. The reason I can see why they donate to the Chicago Humanities Festival would only be for the betterment of understanding, a well-rounded understanding. I don't see during the speech of her having any influence of the Jewish community. I can only see this foundation to have a positive um, one for this speech, rather than some form of bias from the speaker. Um, Analyzing the community uh, around the people, I notice they're more elder and they're more artsy crowd because they really enjoy this kind of form of high art, as you can say, kind of looking at art from a different perspective, rather than the teenagers' form of art such as like rap or hip hop or more modern art. It's kind of a different look since she is a 19th century specialist. So she did not have what I've noticed. She did not have a large interaction with the crowd. She did have an occasional joke, and she also had an occasional laugh. I can tell the passion that she had for what she did, and I appreciated that. And I had a good time, although maybe dry at the same time. I still had a good understanding with the speech, and I found it interesting to myself. But after I asked her if she sees the connection from modern time to her 19th century work, because during her speech she noted about the popular culture of the light in her art as compared to the people talking about iPhones today. So I really want to talk about that after. And she said she did see that connection. and that's because if it's like that popular culture during the 19th century, artists portrayed that art or portrayed that in their artwork, the talk of the crowd. So at the same time, after that, I kind of looked at the crowd. I saw the body language of the crowd. They seemed to be not, I mean, not overjoyed. They just kind of like, okay, this speech is done. It's time to go. Hi, how are you doing? Thank you for your speech. It's very dry, not very over enthusiastic at the same time. Still appreciating the speech. Um, to go farther in, to go farther into the actual speech. This part I'll be summarizing what she talked about and focusing on how she spoke. First, I like to start with the description, going through the critical process when I'm looking at the speech, by the way, and I'll explain, if you do not know, I'll explain each main point as I'm going through. First of all, I'm going to start with description for this speech. She is a 19th century professor discussing the introduction of lights in Paris, thus forming the name of the City of Light. Everyone knows Paris has beautiful nightlife, beautiful lighting of their city. She started off with a great representation of a portrait of a photograph of uh, Paris from a long view, and also a photograph of looking up a very close view of this iconic Eiffel Tower and how it's lit at night. Although she forms arguments of what she's noticed from the art in the 19th century when electricity first formed and lights. Um, her first observation, her first discovery, as she called them, was the outdoor Paris, how the outdoor Paris Boulevard uh, Park nighttime pictures were from kind of the Americans outside looking, like the outside looking in, did portraits of the outdoor scene. So they focus on the nightlife of back then, like the nightlife on the outside, looking at the street lights, gas lights, gas lamps, looking at people, even like the detail of someone lighting a cigarette. Um, so it was more the Americans, kind of the American artists in Paris, the dream city, the most beautiful, like artsy city in the world, as they call it, the capital of Europe during that time. Um, so as you kind of she noticed this pattern as she was studying the art, but as she also discovered that the more indigenous people, the indigenous artists of Paris tended to paint the nightlife from the inside, maybe looking out. They look at the focus on the chandeliers. They focus on the lights on the outside of the window. They focus on the inside of during the nightlife, which is kind of odd. They focus on maybe like clubs, so like the chandeliers in clubs and waitresses, and the beauty from the inside with lights. Um, so going on to her third observation, she this very era when lighting technologies were changing very fast, there was a great discussion of lighting technologies like the iPhone today, where you can kind of see that connection from the popular culture of Paris back then to the popular culture of the United States and the world right now. So you can see as you can see, there's a connection. You can see everyone seems to be talking about it, of course, through their painting or through popular culture at the time. So you can see there's a continual talk by these paintings. There's painting after painting after painting of French and American people painting about Paris and focusing on the nights, like the nightlight, the electro light. They're not focusing on anymore on just like a portrait of a day, like a day in the sunlight. They focus more on the light. So going on, that's summarizing her speech, and those are the main points that she discussed. Going on to analyze what she meant by this, as I mentioned before in her description, she does have a current book studying the visual cultures of the City of Light in the era of Thomas Edison. So you can see she's kind of slightly promoting a book at the same time because of this speech. But obviously her research is very current and because she's constantly doing it right now. This is her project at the moment. So you can see like she has that you can see the subtext there that, I mean, considering she's talking about it and she's writing a book on it, you're like, oh hey, there, kind of see that connection right there, right? So you can see through the interpretation of why she chose the, like, going on past the analysis and going deeper in, you can see why she chose these pictures is because of like the nightlife of, like, you can see trying to prove her point about her book. You can see all about the lights. Every single painting that she presented was about lighting in France. I'm sure there's some indigenous Paris artists that did not paint a light bulb, not one single light bulb in the painting, but she chose these to prove her point. In the fact that lighting, the electrical lighting during that time, was an influence on the cultural art world during the time. So to evaluate like how she presented this message, her description is very straightforward, and I feel very organized by how she decided like to discuss, like, separate her discoveries and explain each discovery with examples from paintings. And her subtext is there, but I don't think she was pushing it too hard about her book. I would just say, like, I would say I learned more about her book through the research about her and about her speech to engage about this and to like really see how I was personally affected by it. I really learned more about the popular culture of the 19th century. I find it like I always find it very interesting knowing what was like the in during that time, like how like it's nice to study like the popular culture of certain eras and see what people thought were the cool things to do. And at that time, electrical lighting was the marvelous thing. It was everyone's about the city of light, Paris, France, the claimed capital of Europe. So I found it very interesting, and so I found that very interesting, and that was the end of that was the end of Hollis Clayson's speech, and I found it very interesting. But I must move on to my next piece, which was a man by William Gibson, and his speech was about sci-fi, and he to give him a little background. Um, actually, let's start with the moderator, the man who was giving the interview for this speech. His name is Bill Savage. He is a Northwestern professor who teaches in the English department, and he focuses on. I mean, he has a slew of books that he's written and novels that he's done before. He's won a couple of awards, and he reviews and publishes in the Chicago Tribune. There's nothing, and he also, but I think is he lives, he's a Chicago native who lives in Rogers Park, which I find, I mean, I live in Rogers Park right now. I live in the Rogers Park area, so I mean, feels like it'd be close to home there. But at the same time, in all seriousness, he will be the moderator for tonight. Um, but going on to the speaker, the man under the stars, the man who deserves, to some, no introduction at all, but to you, just in case, his name is William Ford Gibson. He is a very famous sci-fi writer. He's most famous for coining the word. Oh my gosh, he was. Sorry, I lapsed in the brain. He was most known for the term he coined, cyberspace, which is during very early on, early 1980s, when the internet was not even an idea yet. He was bringing it through his sci-fi's, the idea of the internet, and also he's a very well-written writer and with very many books, and one of the most notable North American science fiction writer there is. The sponsor for the event is the Theater and Interpretation Center and also Northwestern. Both are affiliated with Northwestern University, and I would say the only influence that this benefactor has is that the Theater and Interpretation Center was what provided for the stage, helped provide the accommodations for the speech. To talk more about the audience and how they were, I would say the place was filled from people of many different age groups. I would say all people though of sci-fi loving, because this man is a very notable sci-fi person to listen to, and I can see why he's a very important man and with a lot of knowledge, as I'll explain his knowledge later on. To an extent, at the beginning, he has no real communication with the audience, um, and until the very end, he does some questions.